There are many different animals that are good for children. However, the rule of thumb generally states that any child under the age of 7 might not be ready for a small animal. Generally, you want to start with some kind of a fish in order to make sure that they're responsible enough to be able to feed it and care for it properly. Oftentimes, you'll get a small animal with a very young child, like for example, a hamster. And if that hamster bites a child under the age of 7 or so, that child, their first reaction is going to be to try to fling it off. So that hamster might end up flung all the way across the room and into a wall, and it could die. So it's safer both for the child and the animal not to get an animal until the child is mature enough to understand how to deal with an animal that might bite. And really, any animal can bite at any time. So it's better to just wait, hold off until your child is old enough and mature enough to take care of an animal responsibly. That being said, there are certain animals that are going to be better for younger kids than there are for older kids. For example, a hamster is the first animal that's going to come to mind when you think about getting an animal for your child. They are not the best animal to get for a young child by far. The reason for that is that most hamsters, especially those found in pet stores that aren't bred for their temperament, are going to bite. This may not hold true for the whole hamster's life, but it's probably going to happen when you have them for the first month or two. They're terrified, they're scared, and the majority of the time you're coming at them like this, and their first instinct is going to be to bite what's coming at their heads. So lots of times you'll end up with a child who has gotten blood drawn on their finger because they're coming at a brand new hamster. So if you do get a hamster for your child, make sure they're not handling that hamster for a while until you've tamed it. Some of them are more easily tamed than others are, and really it's dependent upon the hamster and their history. For example, their parenting, their family tree. If you have a bunch of docile hamsters that have been bred from, you're going to probably end up with a very sweet hamster. But if you're talking in a pet store, they do not know the temperament of their parents. So you could end up with a very, very aggressive hamster. There are many different types of hamsters. So there's going to be the really tiny hamsters, such as the Chinese dwarf hamster that has to be housed alone, by the way. Those can be very sweet. Chinese dwarf hamsters, they're very, very small, and they can hug your little finger. The problem with them is going to be most cages can't hold them. They can squeeze out of most bars, and they're very tiny. So if they ever get away, they're gone. They're not real cuddlers, though. So I'd stay away from Chinese dwarf hamsters until your child is fairly old, much older than a young, say, 5 or 6 year old. There's other dwarf hamsters. Dwarf hamsters, other than the Chinese dwarf hamster, can live together, so you can have more than one. They're not always the nicest animal. Dwarf hamsters tend to be a little more aggressive than their larger hamsters are, such as the like honey bear hamster, for example. Those are a little bit nicer, but again, at the beginning, they're probably going to bite. And the smaller the hamster, the older the kid would have to be in order to handle it and maintain it. So hamsters, they're okay. They're certainly not the best animal by far. Mice are very jumpy. They're very, very jumpy. They can be absolutely great pets, but they're so not good for kids. If you have an older kid who doesn't mind how jumpy they can be and can actually control them, maintaining a very small area for them to possibly get out, then it's okay. Not an okay animal for a small child, though, because it's probably going to get away. Gerbils, great animals. They're fantastic, and absolutely the only animal I'd ever say is okay in a fish tank, as long as the fish tank is at least a 20-gallon long tank. And the reason I say that is because tanks provide little to no ventilation. They're not good for most animals, but gerbils do love to dig and burrow, and that allows for a lot of bedding to be put in for them to do so. Cage toppers are fantastic for those. There are certain cages that can actually fit on top of a tank. Those are okay, but you have to make sure you're always cleaning the tank. Gerbils also do bite at the beginning. They can be trained not to, but they do bite at the beginning, so that's something that you need to keep in mind before you purchase one for a small child. Rabbits are great, but should never be placed in a house with kids under the age of 14. That's because they're very temperamental. They don't like a lot of loud noises or to be handled by young children. They can get real stressed out and they can die from that. You need to be very careful when getting a rabbit for small children and let them know there's a certain way to hold a rabbit and a way to talk to a rabbit and a way to play around a rabbit cage. It's not an animal or a pet that I would say is okay for children. It's really not. They're very sweet. They're very docile for the most part. Some aren't, most are. But do not get those for a small child. A guinea pig, pretty much great for most age groups. They're just very loud when they want their treats, or if there's a carrot around, they will squeal for their food. It's very cute, but also can be very annoying. They usually don't do so at night. So if this is an animal that's in a child's room, it's not going to be that much of a problem. Guinea pigs do require a lot of space though. General rule of thumb for guinea pig is you need a cage that's going to be big enough for them to run a complete circle full tilt, meaning their whole body is tilted when they're running. So it's a giant cage, so that's going to be a bit of a problem for those of you that have no room to put a guinea pig cage. Small guinea pig cages are cruel. I would never put a guinea pig in one of those starter cages. Starter cages are exactly that. They're good for about a month or two when the guinea pig is small, but then the guinea pig outgrows them and you need to buy them a bigger spaced cage. I don't care how often you take your guinea pig out, they're not going to be okay in a starter cage their whole life. It's sad fact because most of us can only handle a small cage. They also can provide a bit of a nasty odor, if you will. They're not the best smelling animal in the world, but if you keep up on them and you keep their cage clean, as with most animals, they're going to be okay. A small air purifier next to the cage works wonders, as does an open box of baking soda. Rats, in general, great for just any age group. Before you jump on me for saying rat in the first place, they're very sweet, they're litter trainable, and they can learn how to do tricks. They do like to cuddle. Guinea pigs can be by themselves, rats cannot. They have to be with another rat. And of course, they have to be of the same sex unless you want quite a bit of babies, and trust me, you do not want that. So if you get the rats, that's great. If you get the guinea pig, that's great, but make sure you read up on them ahead of time. Those are the only two animals I would ever recommend for children under the age of 7 if you absolutely, positively had to. Again, after the age of 7, you have a lot more variety in what to choose. If you have any specific questions about any of these animals, please feel free to contact me and I'd love to help you out.